Welcome to Civitai.com, the home of the generative AI art community. If you enjoy this video, please consider hitting us with a like and subscribing, as it'll go a long way in helping us continue to bring you the highest quality AI community content. Please enjoy the video. Welcome to a Civitai Friday Guest Creator Session. My name is Tyler. Today, I got a good one for you guys, and I know you get sick of me saying that every week probably, but you shouldn't, because that means that every week I actually sourced someone really dope to come and talk to you all. So before I get rolling, can I get someone on Twitch to give me a thumbs up in the chat to let me know that you guys can hear me loud and clear? Plus, yes. Awesome. Thank you. Well, guys, today we got my man, MakeItRad. If you do not know MakeItRad, his Twitter is pinned to the top of the Twitch chat. I suggest you click on that real quick, go follow him. And yeah, man, so I've known Rad for a little while now, and he makes, I was drawn to this stuff because he makes these really cool architectural AnimateDiffs that it's like when you see one of his things, it is very apparent that he has a style. And when he's not making something that is based around architecture, well, it's something that feels very organic, and he is a stickler for his quality. If there's one thing about Rad, it is that you will know his renders when you see them, because you might think they're 3D or something because of how crispy and how good they look. So without further ado, Rad, let me get a mic check real quick just so I can make sure that Twitch can hear you.
Yeah, how's it going? Check, check, check.
Can you guys hear Rad? Boom, thumbs up. Okay, cool. Yeah, Rad, why don't you hit me with the screen share? I'm gonna get your screen on Twitch already, so they don't gotta look at my very, very tired face anymore. Sorry, guys. I am on the tail end of an all-nighter because I did a panel and a masterclass for the Amsterdam AI Film Festival, but we are here and we are on time, and it's Friday and we're making it happen, and I am excited. So let's get Rad on the stream right here. Boom. We're going to hide you guys. We're going to full stream you, Rad. And yeah, Rad, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the people and let them know who you are and what you do, and maybe a little bit about what we're going to take a look at today.
Yeah. So I'm MakeItRad. Been doing the AI thing now for since like 2021. Started with GANs and kind of moved my way into this whole AnimateDiff world. Really, just falling in love with diff. It's one of those things that I've been wanting to happen with AI for a very long time. Something to actually start giving me some control, which I haven't been able to get until now. When I was doing the GAN work, it was really cool, but I didn't have the same amount of control that I have with AnimateDiff. And I feel like now with AnimateDiff, I'm really starting to be able to get to the point where I can make things that I want. I can envision what it is. I know how the tools are going to work for me. And, I think that is just a really cool thing. Before it was a little bit more abstract, right? We'd be making things and it was like, oh, wow, this is really cool. But emulating that and making that happen on a consistent basis was not always easy. So, now that we're here, it's really cool for me. I come from a background of doing motion graphics and kind of design. I have a design education, and I wanted to be able to put these tools together somehow, and be able to create work like I would do traditionally with Photoshop and Illustrator and After Effects. But that wasn't really the case until probably this year. So that's a little bit of my backstory. I don't know how far you want me to go into it, Tyler, but No, dude, that's great. Let me ask you, since you come from that background, how heavy do you feel like the experience you have with motion graphics and motion design and just like all the design stuff you did prior,
how much of that do you feel like you're able to really lean into with everything that you're doing now? And I mean, I'm sure it'll be kind of apparent when we start to take a look at your stuff in just a little bit, but
Sure.
yeah, how beneficial do you think at least knowing the basics of that stuff is?
I thought it was huge, because a lot of times what is going to be a real problem for somebody else to do, would be really quick for me just to do like a little test with in After Effects or something, especially when we start to work with like video to video. All that kind of stuff really works its way into my avenue a little bit more. And, I haven't really been on the box in a really long time in terms of actually animating this work. I work as a creative director, so I'm usually leading the teams of people. But having that language and being able to speak about art was huge, especially when everything was just text, we're prompting. If you were able to use that kind of design education that you had and the terminology that you would talk to other artists about, you were kind of one step ahead, I think, of a lot of the artists out there. So that helped me. And then just having a good eye and understanding timing and editorial and all that kind of stuff is huge. Some people don't understand color theory, or they don't understand, just basic foundational art things. I feel like that's pretty easy going for me. I taught for 12 years at CalArts, so I talk about art all day, every day, all the time. So it just kind of is second nature to me at this point.
Well, someone in our Discord chat already said it's so good that you can't tell it's made with AnimateDiff.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that's kind of one of those things I've strived for a long time. Doing this architecture thing that I've been doing for the last 3 or 4 years isn't really something that I think the AI community is necessarily, in touch with and excited by. I see a couple other people that are kind of into that world, but they're architects, and they live that. I'm not an architect. I just like architecture. I like design. There's something about architecture that really excites me on a personal level, even though I didn't go to school for that. So it's fun. It gives me an avenue to explore something that I enjoy on a personal level, and I think that was one thing that I liked about AI art is I didn't want to just be doing what I was doing for work all the time. I wanted it to be kind of an artistic expression. I wanted it to be something fun where I wasn't answering to a client, right? And I am the client. So that's why I started doing this, and that's why it's been so fun. And I've just been intrigued by this. When I first started this, it was VQGAN. People were typing things in, and the artwork was coming out really weird. I was super intrigued by it. But, there were kind of a lot of moral issues that I was tackling with internally. Like, is this okay for me to be using this model? What is a model? It just felt too good to be true that you could just type things in and these pictures would come out. And even though they were completely messed up, it was still really, really awesome. And I was intrigued by it. And even then, I was kind of playing around with doing architecture at that point. But, I went and dug out some of my, some really early stills that I made on VQGAN, like this type of thing. And it has this weird, like, rainbowy feel to it. And, VQGAN was always really strange. But I started to learn ways to manipulate VQGAN with noise and black and white images, which I always thought was kind of cool. And I think there's still something really special about VQGAN and just kind of the way that it works. I had somebody just send me a VQGAN notebook the other day, so I'm going to try to fire it up and run it local after 4 years, which I think will be super awesome to do. But dude,
some of these look like they would be rad to run through AnimateDiff.
I've actually done it. I got a sample for you here. I'll show you. So yeah, once I started working with VQGAN, for me, it was very immediate. Like, I'm like, how do I start to animate these things? Like, what can I do with them? I started to play a little bit with architecture. So here we have some furniture, kind of playing off the shapes of like Eames chairs and modern furniture, and then just architecture in general. But it was always really weird and strange. And that was kind of what drew me to it at first. I loved that I could see things in a very experimental way that I wouldn't see myself, and kind of push me in new directions that I wouldn't necessarily find on my own. I might get there someday, but it would take me a lot longer to find these types of unusual directions. But yeah, I wanted to know how to animate this, and that's literally what I did. I beat myself up for a few weeks trying to figure out how to animate it, and finally I found somebody that made a notebook that would scale the image. a certain amount of time, right? So you would scale 0.1% every single frame, and you would kind of get these animations. And, that's what I've got kind of here. So this is very early, kind of VQGAN, one frame at a time animation, not real animation, but, we didn't even have parallax happening here. It's literally like scaling in. You can see all the funkiness as you're kind of interpolating between the frames. But still, this was really cool at the time. When I first got this going, I was like, "Oh my god, this is insane, man!" I'm totally
dude. This totally still holds up. Like, I think it's funny how, and I feel like this almost happens with every like digital medium, even like video, right? The further we get into digital, the more people now want things to look more retro. Like the further forward we go, the like more we tend to try to go backwards and take the things that we started out with and incorporate them into everything we're doing now, right? Because I see this and I'm like, holy cow, like with this, I want to make stuff with this right now.
Yeah, I mean, I still think it's really cool. There's something bizarre about it. When I hit this stuff off at first, everything that I was doing up until this point was 3D. I kind of came up with this in this kind of NFT world over COVID. So it was, I was making all these little black and white loops. And then one day I discovered this and got something to animate. And I'm like, well, this is so different from what I've ever done. I wonder if I should even show anybody. And, I minted like 10 of them and they sold out that day. And then the next month was like sellouts every single day. And I was putting out little videos like this every single day. And it was just super fun for me. They were cool. And I was just excited that people were actually into the work because it was so bizarre to me. But still really, really cool stuff.
Yeah, no, man, this is rad. So you can still run these notebooks if you happen to have one, right?
If you've got one that has all the dependencies linked up, you absolutely can. But that's the problem is you start to get some of these older dependencies. It gets really hard to get them to work on the modern system because, you've got a lot of other dependencies already running. But you can, just need to set up like Conda virtual environments to kind of put them in. And I've had a hard time getting, like I have the old notebooks for these still, but I can't get them to work. But there was a user at the Comfy convention that sent me one the other day. It's a working copy of Pity. I don't know if you're familiar with that one, but it could do everything that I'm doing here basically in the Pity and do it a little bit more awesome.
Dude, I signed up for the Pity creators Patreon and I downloaded the whatever the latest book was, and for the life of me, I tried following all the instructions and YouTube videos I could find, and I absolutely could not get the notebook to run for me.
Pity had a lot of problems in the later days, like getting it to work, and literally dependencies would change daily and it would break, and it started to get to be a little bit troublesome on like Google Colab because they kept changing major portions of Colab and it would just break everything that we were all building there. So between Pity and like the Jax notebooks that I used to use, they used to drive me insane. It was daily troubles trying to figure those out and get them to work. So I'm happy to be completely local now.
Dude, so
I went local.
So seeing this early VQGAN stuff, like this totally looks like where like what we would think of as AI animation kind of really started, because like this looks like Deforum almost, but in a totally different but still the same kind of way.
Yeah, kind of. It was using a little bit different models. It was using a GAN instead of diffusion, which runs a little bit different, really, really slow compared to what we have now. You're talking about 7 minutes per frame on one of these things, which is, crazy when you think about the 2 seconds that it takes per frame now. It's really come a long ways. And the models, we all take for granted that we have like basically a model for everything that we want to do, or we have a lore that we can use or something. Here we didn't. We had one model. This was based on ImageNet. Like that was it.
Wait. Did you say 7 minutes per frame?
I did, yes.
Okay, man. Okay, I'm not going to complain about what I went through with Warp Fusion anymore, because apparently Warp, by the time I got into Warp, it was already on version like 12.5 or something. So apparently I had it good compared to what you.
Yeah.
Because okay, how long ago was VQGAN? Remind me how like far back the AI timeline this was.
This was, most of the stuff was done like in March 2021, like back in those days. So, it's a little bit of time from now, almost 4 years ago.
Hey man, real quick, I'm gonna pause you real quick because we actually got someone in the Twitch chat that wrote something really nice I think you should hear. Yep. So, Forcliffe, I appreciate you writing this. So he said, I want to take a moment to express my deep appreciation for your work. It's truly amazing how many things we can accomplish these days with the help of AI tools, and your contributions are a shining example of that. Your creativity and skill are inspiring, and it's incredible to see the possibilities that technology brings to our designs. Thank you for your dedication and incredible work you do. Your efforts are not only impressive, but also a testament to the power of innovation in it.
Wow. Very, 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 very kind, man. I appreciate that. I feel like too often we are all kind of fighting the technology. I go into LinkedIn and people are, bad mouthing it. And I just try to tell everybody, it's like, give the stuff a shot, try it. You can make your decisions after you've given it a little bit of a go. But don't just come out swinging and telling everybody how horrible this is, because it's actually a really great tool. I think it's really going to open up creativity to a point where we're going to be making things that we weren't imagining. And I know it's spooky. Like, I get it. You'd be foolish not to be a little bit scared by it. But I think if you embrace it, everybody will start to feel that, we can make original work still. I don't make the same work that you do, Tyler. I don't think our stuff looks the same. And I feel like
it most certainly does not.
I just don't feel like people make the same kind of work. Everybody starts getting into their own vibe. They kind of create things that they're off to them. And I know I make a lot of things that I'm just kind of, I'm off on my own little world sometimes, just exploring my own thing. And I'm having a good time doing it. And that's just the way it's going to be. I feel like all artists want to put their own stamp on the work, and they will. And, they're going to try to be original. And there are a lot of community things where people are learning, and they're learning with some of the same tools. But even then, I feel like people are really making a lot of different stuff. Okay, you might see the same transition happening in there or something like that. But, I think most people out there are trying to push what they're doing and trying to make their work look somewhat unique to themselves. And I do feel like you can do that with AI. You just gotta play, and, maybe you don't post everything you do, and you're trying something a little bit different constantly. That's the other thing I would just encourage people to do, is like really go in and play with all the settings. A lot of people are sitting there asking.
Let me ask you this, because so this was a question that came up at the Amsterdam AI Film Festival this morning, and I'd be interested to hear what your answer to it is. So with the topic of all of our work looking so drastically different in the way that we use this, do you in any way, shape, or form feel like everyone who makes AI animations in some way are at all slaves to the models, or like the inherent kind of like styles that are popular in the AI community? Do you think like, and it's funny because this was a question, and this seemed to be like a concern for people, and from my end, I think if you're in the open source side of things, the community decides kind of where the models go, which is why I think it's so important for there to be open source. But yeah, do you feel like there's like a DNA of sameness in everyone's work at some point, because we probably all use the same things that are trained on the same things at some point?
I mean, maybe, but I think you could say that for all of mankind, right? We're all kind of trained on the same history. So it is what it is. I think if you're kind of stuffed off in these kind of closed modeled systems, and I'm not dissing on them by calling them closed models, they're just different ways of working, but something more like a runway where you don't know where the model is, maybe you're going to get put into there. But I think, especially in the open source community, it's like, go take a few minutes and just check out Civita, and it's like, there's a million models there, man. And not only that, but you can train your own if you really want to, and you want to get away from something. It's not hard to do to train a LoRa. It takes you 30 minutes if you get there.
Yeah. So Cats, what you just said in the Discord chat, when before the IP adapter was a thing and it was model and LoRa to get the animation, my way of trying to differentiate myself was like, so I tell everyone every now and then that I really like going treasure hunting on Civitai, where I actually reverse filter everything and I go to the very bottom of the list, and I'll take like an hour or so and I'll download a bunch of things from the least downloaded section and kind of work my way up and see if I can find any gems down there, and I definitely have, because there's things at the bottom of it that people just haven't used or don't know exist, because so many people just download the models at the top of the filter and leave it at that. But there's definitely value in treasure hunting to try to cultivate a style of your own. And I wouldn't even call it digging in a gutter, as someone in our Discord chat just said, but more so just giving things that are brand new a fighting chance, because sometimes it's hard for them to get that steam to climb up, because the things that are at the top of the filter have been up there for so long and they have so many upvotes and reactions. So I encourage all of you guys to do that on Civit, and I think you guys will be pleasantly surprised with what you find. But dude, this is sick, man, what we're looking at right now.
So this is a whole nother technology. I kind of went backwards on these. I started with VQGAN. StyleGAN had been out for a little while before, and one of the guys that I was working with on a VQGAN project called Mythologicals, his name's Jeremy Torman, was really into StyleGAN, and he's like, man, you got to try StyleGAN. And I kind of put him off for like 6 months, and he kept telling me how I had to try it. And so I did this, and again, I went back to architecture and did it. It's kind of a combination with JAX diffusion. I don't know if you remember that one, but Human, the guy who actually runs the forum now, had a JAX diffusion notebook, and so I took that. I made about 10,000 of these images, and then I started training a model on them in StyleGAN. And this was kind of the result of it. It was my first StyleGAN, and there's a lot of mess ups in it and whatnot, but I still look at it and think it's really cool. There's something kind of special about this for me, just because it was kind of the first thing that I had ever done with StyleGAN. It has a really unique look to it, and the first thing I think anybody says when they look at StyleGAN work is, man, this feels like butter. And I encourage people who can't see this work great on the Discord or on the Twitch stream to go check out my website. It's just MakeItRad.xyz, and you can watch this stuff in real time there. But GANs have a very unique look, and I still encourage people to do this, just so you can kind of see what we had to go through back then. So you heard me say 10,000 images, right? So I had to make 10,000 images in JAX first, which, probably looking at about 1 minute to 2 minutes a frame at that point. Then you had to train the GAN, and training the GAN with 10,000 images using transfer learning and StyleGAN 2. I think I spent about 2 weeks of CPU on, or a GPU on this, total, like 24 hours a day for 2 weeks. I was renting GPUs places to do it, but it was really cool. Made you feel like a mad scientist that you were putting all this together. It was super addictive. I was renting like 8 A100s at a time at some places to try to render them out in a day or two, as opposed to training them for weeks and weeks at a time. But there's some great things that you can do with StyleGAN. I still play with it. I know one of the guys put in a piece of my organic fusion in one of the chats and said that was their favorite piece. That originally was trained in StyleGAN. I'm doing it locally here now on a really good GPU. It doesn't take me 2 weeks anymore. I can pound those things out in about 2 to 3 days, but they're still really cool. And there's something very unusual about this work. People see this and they're just like, what is it? They don't get it. And I don't know if I necessarily get it either. It's really unusual and strange. They feel like there's some sort of dream that you're kind of living through. And
dude, yeah, this one, I feel like this would be what going through like a Beverly Hills like real estate walkthrough would be if you were to like drop acid before meeting your realtor. Like this is what that actually probably would be like.
So these were all kind of like based on 1960s interiors. Again, a lot of the things that I'm into are kind of like this mid-century worlds, and that's what I built in Jax and just kind of started to play around with them. And I started to train this model, and I'm like, man, this is beautiful. I was really into it. And, this was kind of right after I had discovered who Puck was. They were always doing these really cool things on the blockchain as well. He did a whole art series called Lost Poets, which was done with stills on this. And I was fortunate enough to actually have them reach out to me before they've disappeared on Twitter and kind of asked me about my process on these and whatnot. So that was a really cool thing for me, to have another very big artist, like a Beeple level artist kind of reach out and want to understand how I pulled this off and everything like that. They had actually purchased a bunch of my crystals because that was another thing that I was really into, were making crystals. I don't know why, but I was making a lot of crystals.
Whoa. Dude, it's so cool that like I can look at all these things you're showing us right now and see like based on even just like the Civitai logo that you made, it's so clear that you've kind of kept your creative direction through all the tools, and it's just kind of evolved with the tool, but I can see like the DNA of what you're making now in this early stuff too.
Yeah, no, I agree. I look at this and I hadn't looked at it in a while, and pulling it all up, this morning, I was just kind of like, man, I can really see a lot of the progression. And like, here's an example of where I was starting to mix Jax diffusion with StyleGAN. So I'd rendered out a style in StyleGAN, like an interpolation, and then I was going over the top of it with either Jax diffusion or disco diffusion to try to get it to have a little bit more of a unique look that didn't look so photographic. And this was actually a lot of fun. The first one I did with disco, and that's this one. And I just always thought that this thing was really, really cool.
Dude,
yeah, there's something definitely unusual about it.
I'm so sad that I wasn't involved in this stuff for all the early disco time, because like this, with everything that I know now, I wish that like I want to try to get a disco notebook installed and make this stuff and use this stuff as init videos for AnimateDiff.
Yeah, you absolutely can. You could rock all this all day. I encourage everybody to try StyleGAN. I think it's a great thing for people to experience and learn. I think all that kind of thought process and learning how to create a data set, and even though it takes a really long time and you might fail like 20 times doing it, will influence what you're doing all the time. And you'll have such a better understanding when you go to make a LoRa, like, wow, I only need 20 to 30 images now. Wow, that's pretty awesome. You'll have a better appreciation for all of this. It was made to make faces. That's what they did with it. Is they made heads kind of move, synthetic heads. And, it's just a cool tool. This here's an example of the same type of thing. I learned how to make diffusion models. So I made a disco diffusion model for this that just made mushrooms. And then I put that into StyleGAN and trained the StyleGAN on those mushrooms from disco, and then exported out interpolations from them. I did that with another guy. His Alter Beast is his kind of code name. Here was some more StyleGAN. This is when I started to play with trying to get a little bit more abstract with the StyleGAN. So you're kind of going through the latent walk in a different way. I met a person named Diego Porres who does amazing StyleGAN kind of like recreations of the code. And this was one of his code bases that he had. And I was just really blown away by it.
Dude.
Man, it takes this to the next level. So let me show you the difference between these real quick.
So here, Rad, real quick. Pause right here. There's a great question in the chat, because as we're talking about this, I realize from this question that probably a lot of people that are watching this might be within their first couple months in AI, gotcha. Right? So this question was from. I always feel like I'm getting everyone's Twitch names absolutely just a bit butchered. You lost 74, but he said total noob here, but when you guys say notebook, what exactly do you mean? Do you want to just break down real quick what a notebook is?
So notebook was Google Colab. I mean, that's literally what it is. Let's see here. I might actually I'm not logged in, so I won't be able to do it. But it literally is. It's called a notebook. Jupyter kind of put out this thing where you could run Python code in what is called a cell. And so it's a website that you go to. In this case, we would go to Google Colab. They used to let you use their GPUs for free over there. And you would be running Python cells of code on their machines, and the outputs would be coming back out into that notebook. Similarly, you could be working in a console, right? Like more of a session like this, where you're typing code back and forth, but the notebook made it so you could kind of have all these different little code snippets all over the place, and you just kind of hit a play button on each cell. So it was really cool. It kind of changed it, and it made it so that people didn't have to have a GPU at home, which was a real big barrier for a lot of people. Getting an NVIDIA GPU that could handle doing this type of work, even the free ones that Google was giving out at that point, were well outside the means of most of us. So it was a great resource for us. At some point, they started to charge a lot of money. You could do them for free for a while, and then you could pay for a pro account, which was like $50 a month for unlimited V100s, which was a great GPU. And then occasionally you get an A100, which was a great GPU. And then they changed the pricing like 2.5 years ago to the point where it really started to cost a lot for me to do these StyleGAN renders. By the time I did the math,
they were getting hip to everyone using the notebooks to make silly pictures.
There was that, and then there were guys like me training StyleGAN on it. And, what they wanted me to charge me to do that, to run a GPU for a couple of weeks at a time, would have cost thousands of dollars. It was just made more sense to just buy the GPU and do it at home at that point. So, that was kind of it. So hopefully we answered the question about what is a notebook, but that is what a notebook is. And then what I have up on the screen right now is the same StyleGAN model, but kind of put in two different ways. One of them, the one on the left, is through Diego's I can't remember what it's called, a flesh interpolation. And the one on the right is just a regular interpolation. And the flesh one is kind of like this thing that goes through the latent space, kind of in this weird circular pattern, but it also leaves all these artifacts. So it's awesome. I loved these things. They kind of were really pretty. And they always kind of stick out in my head. I do enjoy looking at both of those.
Man, see, guys, so there's a little bit of the sauce for you. Install the older AI tools, and that's how you're going to be making stuff that's completely different from everyone else right now.
You guys yesterday on your Twitch were cracking me up. You were talking about warp, so I had to go back and get all my old warp stuff. I was using warp when it was disco. And these were some things that I was doing with it. And at the time, this was pretty groundbreaking. People would look at it and just completely freak out. They're like, how are you getting everything to track like that? This was with disco as well. And my thing was I was making these kind of textured balls and just rotating them in 3D with lots of noise on them. And then I would diffuse over the top of them, and everything would track, and you could get some really, really great looks. But, I did a whole art series of just these balls. And I had a blast with them. Disco really did a good job. This is before it kind of went to diffusion. I know he reappropriated the notebook and started making it work with diffusion. But at that point, I was kind of more into doing stills when he was doing that. And I was just amazed with diffusion in general. When Stable Diffusion came out, it was simply mind-blowing how quick we could get things to happen. And how fast and how good the model was compared to what we had in the past.
These things are so cool, and it's like the animation style is just so different from everything that we have now, and it's like people are chasing so much stability, no pun intended, that I keep trying to find ways now to embrace more of the weirdness in it, because it's like it's great to have the ability with all of these AI tools to make things that are very stable and coherent, but there gets to a certain point, especially with like realism models, right? Where if like things are so stable and realistic that at a certain point, if I want to do that, I'll just go take my camera outside, you know?
Well, that's kind of the way I feel too. It's like everybody keeps asking me, like, what do you think of Luma and what do you think of the new runway? I'm like, look, they're really great. They're going to be cool tools for everybody to use. But like, I'm really into this kind of like abstraction and looking at things from a little bit of a different perspective. Yeah, if I want to go take pictures, I do have a camera. I can do that. If I want to make it perfect, you know, I work with teams of 3D artists for a living. We can do that. But what's interesting to me about the AI is getting these new ideas, getting new ways of looking at things, and kind of the iteration process, you know, being able to iterate an idea off 1,000 times or 2,000 times and doing it all in a day is immense. And then, you know, I just have to do my job better. I have to be a better creative director, a better curator. And I think that's really what kind of helps set me apart from other people, you know, is that I can look at what a lot of people might think is a bad idea, be able to blow it up and make it into something that people go, whoa, I've never seen that before, hopefully. And that's exciting.
This thing that's on the screen right now, I feel like is like Mick Jagger after a really bad night.
Yeah, after a bender. Seriously. I can see that. Yeah. So AnimateDiff came out, you know, kind of blew my mind. I'm sure it blew everybody's mind. You know, for me, and you guys were talking about him yesterday, Remy was like my idol. Everything the guy would pump out, and he'd do it in disco usually, I was just blown away by. So I would always try to like compare to this type of stuff. You probably remember this, Tyler.
Yeah, absolutely.
The lower right-hand corner was insane to me. I used to take the top video and just kind of like apply things to it. And when I was able to put diff onto it, you know, so I got a little green screen copy of it. I threw some diff onto it. This is like in the first week of playing with it. You know, I'm doing image to video and it's tracking already. I'm like, oh God, it's over. Like, this is going to be great. This is awesome. You know, so it was like testing this type of thing. And I'm just like, this is incredible. I can't believe it. And when I first tried diff, you know, it was making these like little 15 frame GIF animations. And I thought, this is stupid. Like, who's going to care about this? And then, you know, they threw it into Comfy and, you know, my head melted, and I think the rest of the world's did too. And the context windows were disappearing and we could do image to video. And then the IP adapters came out and it was just like boom, 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 boom. And it's still like every day I'm learning something new. I cannot keep up with everything that is happening, and it is insane.
Which is why I know I say it. I say it at some point on all my streams. I say it a lot, but I'm going to continue saying it because I feel like people need to hear it. Very little great work gets done in your own little box. And that's why it's so important to find a community of people to do this stuff with that are just as into it as you, because you guys can blind spot each other, right? Because everyone has such distinct and different interests and ideas of how they want to use this stuff that they're going to be looking out and keeping up with different things. And then you guys let each other know what thing that just came out is like that everyone else should be in tune with, and you guys just blind spot for each other. And I mean, that's how I found out about a lot of stuff that I probably wouldn't have found out about had I just been tinkering with this stuff, keeping to myself, you know, and not interacting with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like, you know, I'm a little introverted. I don't want to be in like gigantic discords all the time. And, you know, I've been part of a few of them, which is great. But I end up building up really close relationships with certain individuals, and a lot of us end up or have gone pretty far with all of this, you know. And so there's, even if it's just DMing people that you know, it really does open up a lot, especially if you're like beating your head against the wall trying to figure something out, and it's been weeks and weeks and weeks, and it's just not working. A great example of that is, some of the sparse control animation that I've been doing recently. I tried StyleGAN on it. I tried bringing it into image to video. I tried doing all these different techniques for it. And I think I spent about 2 weeks on it, and I was shooting pers, my renders constantly. Me and him are buddies. We kind of throw things back and forth every once in a while. And, he goes, hey, you should go check out what Palm just did. On the Bonadoko server, he's got this sparse control notebook up there. It might work for what you're looking to do. I wouldn't have known about it because, Bonadoko was like a very large server. I'm not a social person like that. I'm a little bit more, on my box. He sent me that notebook, and, it was kind of like I had tried sparse control before, but I hadn't tried it with these new IP adapter weights. And that really changed everything. That sparse control is the basis for steerable motion. It's really what is defining AnimateDiff for me right now. Between sparse control, steerable motion, like those two tools just change it all. You don't even have to have control nets. It's insane how great it is.
Amen. I know for everyone that's watching out there and everyone in the chat, I know we're not exactly showing you guys a workflow right now, but I hope you guys are catching some of these things and saying, oh man, maybe I should go find that thing and try that. I hope you guys are listening and catching that, because he just gave you guys a really big gem there. So
yeah, there's some big alpha there. Go to the Bonadoko server, their Discord, go check out the AnimateDiff kind of little section that they have. There's a lot there. And the two big tools that they're working on are sparse control, which became steerable motion, which is also known as DO. Or, some people know it as what happens on Kriya. But it's the same type of thing. It's working with animation. This was my very first AnimateDiff. I dug this up for you, Tyler.
Oh, dude, that's sick. So this is the very first thing that you did.
This was one of the very first things. Well, it says it's number 76, so it must have been the 76th one that I ran in that hour. And watching my head explode, and I very much decided I would never use anime models, but they really animated better than everything else at this point in time. So I rocked it, and I was pretty excited when I got this out. I was like, man, waves are incredible. This was kind of the second run of stuff that I was working on. When I was able to get something this good after a day of playing with it, like I knew this was where the future for me was going to head. And, I haven't really looked back, and I've had a lot of access to, the other tools. I do a lot of testing with stability, and, I do runway stuff, and this still is more exciting to me. I think there's something really cool about it all.
I totally agree, man, because coming back to the open source thing, I think that as dope as everything coming out now is, when you don't have any choice over the model you're using, the uniqueness of your idea still holds a lot of weight, and that's still the thing I think people should be really trying to cultivate and work on the most. But I like the idea of being able to switch up my model and completely change the base of what I'm getting at any time that my interest changes, right? Like our taste evolves too, and it might get a little difficult for that to evolve as far as it possibly can if we're all tied to the same model that we don't actually know what it is.
Yeah, and I think even with a lot of the closed box places, eventually what we're doing in this open source world kind of merges its way over to those places as well. I don't think they're always necessarily at the front runner, because there's a lot of gears that have to turn in a larger corporation to make something. So when you have something that's a little bit more nimble and quick and kind of community driven by like what's actually wanted right now, I think it kind of fuels the fire. It pushes everybody a little further. I think competition is really great with this market. I really hope that things don't get so regulated to the point where only the Googles and the OpenAIs of the world can actually make the tools for us, because I think it's going to stifle everything, and it's not going to push itself as much as it did. Like, look at how far we've come in the last 4 years, and I mean, this has been going on longer than that, but in my time period that I've been part of, I've seen it just explode to the point you saw that stuff we were looking at earlier. It was pretty rudimentary to where we are now.
It is, but it's still, I'm telling you, the more stable stuff gets, the more I want to go back to the stuff that is like super wild and all over the place, because then I feel like that builds even more of a differentiator for you, especially if you can find a way to work it into the stable stuff we're doing now.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's something about some of those old tools that are fun, but I think if you just go in and explore what we have here, there's a lot to kind of figure out. Like, this thing here is a pretty good example of it. I didn't know that I could mask things. And this was kind of masking before masking was necessarily big. It was using QR code, like a control net. That's how I was starting to create it. But I was shocked that I could get, what was in the white section of my mask to interact what was in the black section of my mask by kind of changing where the time steps were happening. I still look at this and go like, this is awesome. Imagine trying to do this the traditional way with 3D. I wouldn't be able to do it in an afternoon, number one. This would be like a 2-week endeavor with a couple of really high-end like Houdini artists, and getting them to understand what I wanted to actually happen here would be very difficult. So being able to do it this way is pretty exhilarating, really.
Dude, this thing on the screen is like something I noticed about a lot of what you show me. And I know this is true for a lot of things people are making AnimateDiff, because it's kind of like the nature of the motion it gives out. But as chaotic as this stuff is, it's also very soothing to watch at the same time.
Yeah. Well, I probably should have showed some of this earlier work. So this was the black and white stuff that I was doing, Tyler, in the early days of kind of making things. And it was all just about little loops that I would make in 3D. I didn't know how to use Octane at the point. I had never used any sort of hardware renderer, and that's why I started all of this. But they were always just little loops. I kept them black and white, mostly so that I didn't have to concentrate on shading. I had certain shaders that I could just use, and I knew that I could set up good light sources and make everything look really photographic and great. And so that's what I did. And literally these were dailies for me. I did one a day, every single day for months at a time. And it was kind of trying to figure out a new technique every single day. And, eventually I found AI and I kind of outgrew this, but they were all about this kind of soothing feeling and just watching these loops happen that were 3 to 10 seconds long over and over and over and over again. That's all it was. And then it became like, how the hell do I loop all this stuff? It was kind of trying to challenge myself on how to loop things constantly. And that became the next big challenge for me in AI as well, because nothing looped at first. And that was the great thing about AnimateDiff, right? Was that it looped, or you could make it loop pretty easily.
Exactly. I think looping for a lot of people is a really big deal, because that's like such a desired effect, especially with social now. Yes,
absolutely. I think looping, for me at least, when I make work that I'm trying to sell to people, I'm not trying to give them a 5-minute like short movie or film. I'm trying to give them something that they could put into a picture frame and that it could live there as a piece of art. Something that's not going to be distracting. It shouldn't move too fast and like grab your attention. But think of it, it's almost like what you see in Harry Potter when the people's pictures are alive, right? Is that moving? Yes, it is moving. That's kind of what I'm after with it all, and that's where I've been trying to strive and go to.
So sick, man. So okay, there's something I noticed throughout everything you've shown today, is that like the squares. So whether it's been your architectural stuff or just the more abstract stuff, I've noticed that you really lean into squares and like very specific shapes, and it feels very intentional.
Well, I mean, the models were usually trained square, so you usually get the best results from the square, especially in the older days. I think you're able to break out of that now pretty easily, but when I first started, I saw a lot of people making things where they would stretch the sizes out and everything would get distorted, and sometimes you're after that. But a lot of times I wasn't. I didn't want 12 heads. I only wanted one head. So the easiest way to do that was to just go square. It didn't require any sort of up-resing or high-res fixes to make that happen. So it was kind of a little bit of the technology. But even when you looked at the black and white work I did, it was always square. So I always kind of favored the square to begin with. I'll go into 9x16 like what I have up now. When I know I'm going to have like a television set that's a 9x16, I'll make it that way. But if not, I'll make things square. I really don't mind changing up the directions, but it's like so many times I don't know what kind of screen the work's going to be displayed on anyhow. So it makes it tough to decide what you're going to shoot, what shape you're going to do.
Dude, so can these are like, did you make these for a client or is this just experimenting?
No, these were pieces of art that I sold, these ones.
And this is AnimateDiff.
It is AnimateDiff, but it's not a traditional workflow. It's a workflow that I created and kind of came up with myself. I take one image, blow it out like 50 times, and then I take that, run it through the IP adapter because each one of those images is going to be a little bit different. The IP adapter kind of smooths it up, and it looked like I was getting a real breeze out of it. But this wasn't, if I did this again now, I would probably just use Sparse control to do it because I think I could probably get a smoother animation with it now, knowing what I know now. But again, like I had to experiment, come up with this kind of weird workflow to come up with this, and they came out great. This is kind of where it started. I was working with these ones that were basically the same type of thing, but they didn't have these kind of graphic backgrounds around them. But these were all the same techniques. I'd throw one image into this thing that would duplicate the image. I found a node that says, duplicate the image so many times, and it would try to make the same image, but every one of them was off a little bit. And then it's essentially just kind of interpolating that when you put it through the IP adapter batch and try to render on top of it.
Dude, I really love how on the one on the right, there's the sharp line where the image ends, but then the leaves extend past it.
Yeah. No, I'm really kind of this is kind of the graphic designer in me, right? It's kind of trying to play with this idea of kind of graphic and realistic and collage kind of all at the same time. Like this one here has shadows from the leaves on a wall that you can't really see in the background. And I enjoy this kind of playing with positive and negative shapes within the work and trying to figure out what the figure and ground is. I think that's a lot of fun for me. When you look at these at first, you're just kind of like, oh, that's cool. It's a house, some wind blowing. And I think as you start to dig into the details a little bit further, you start to see things that maybe you weren't expecting and knowing what they were. And it just drives a little bit of intrigue into it. Like, what is this big ball? Is this the sun? Well, it was at one point. It got a little abstracted.
So we just had a couple really great comments in the Discord chat. One says, yeah, I see why this guy was able to sell his work. 2 says, when are you going to start a video postcard business? And 3 was, were these base images real or were they generated?
They're all generated. I've trained a lot of models on kind of mid-century homes like this. In fact, you guys can go check out a thing called Koji. It's where I actually created my own model, and they built on the fly NFTs for you. You would build it using their model on their website, and then the generations that you would come up with, you could actually mint. So, a very kind of novel concept that just kind of came out. I had always wanted to find an NFT platform that could give me that flexibility. They literally built an entire backend around it, which I found to be intriguing. Let me see if I can just pull that up because I still think that that's pretty awesome. That's worth showing if I can get it to load here.
Yeah, let's see it. Dude, these are so cool, man. It's like so everyone always complains to me on my social media that so much of what they see people make with AI feels like evil or demonic or a little like disfigured or whatever. But everything you've been showing is like, I wish all the people that feel that way could see the type of stuff you make so that people could understand the range of what's possible.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think everybody kind of gets into their own little thing, right? A lot of people seem to be into this kind of this evil or dark art type of thing. There's a lot of cyberpunk stuff out there, and there's all sorts of these little things. And that's fine. Like, get into whatever you're into. If that's what you want to do, go for it. But there are a lot of other things to do. So going kind of back to Koji, I did a big collection of work called Good Morning, Good Night. It was just a bunch of architecture kind of works that I was making in Stable Diffusion. I really didn't expect this to go anywhere. And I had a couple of really big collectors reach out to me and say, hey, are you ever going to mint this stuff? I'm like, sure. When I get back from vacation, I'll do it. One of them was a person named OXDGB. And, he tweeted about it. He bought this piece here. And as soon as he did, like, this stuff started selling like crazy. And so, like, every week I started putting out 12 pieces. I kept them really limited. And, that's kind of how this whole Koji thing became for me. I think these went really well. People were really into them. I tried to change up the styles constantly. Every week there was a little bit of a different play on it. Sometimes they were photorealistic, sometimes they weren't. Sometimes they were very illustrated. And then I was approached by Koji to kind of do what you see here. And so you can't mint anymore, but you can still kind of go in and see what was created. So these are all pieces that were created with my model. There's literally thousands of them that people came in and made. And then people had the option to actually buy them, and they built the front end to it. So you could choose either inside or outside. You could pick the location where you'd want people to be. You could tell them the time of day that they would want. I like noon. You could pick some accent colors. And so this was all built into the model. They built the back end like this for it. You can talk, do you want clouds or no clouds? Do you want to pool in the scene or not? I gave people the option of being able to put tall, wide, or square, because this was always something that people were asking me, like, can't you just do me something 9x16, please? And I'm like, okay. But now they could actually choose it that way. They could pick what they wanted and make that a reality for themselves. So I thought that was really cool. I loved being able to have people be interactive with the work, and then you hit generate, and you get your little guy over here and it'll generate. It's basically opening up Stable Diffusion on the back end. It's opening up something like Replicate. It's rendering it out, and it'll pop up here in just a moment, and you'll be able to see things. But being able to see what people were into was super cool. Then watching them be able to mint something was super cool as well. But I just really loved having this interface built around your art. And, there were 3 of us that launched this site. And so each one of us kind of had our own unique UI and everything like that. So kind of a really cool idea. And I hope it takes off at some point. This was kind of the downfall of the NFT market when this came out. So it didn't sell like crazy. But I still think the idea and what it is pretty fascinating. And I think like this is how I see AI art happening. It's where the model is the art. There's something really unique about that and special. And I don't know why it's not coming out. So we don't need to keep waiting.
Dude, I feel like we need that little guy to bounce around between the node graph, and it would ease the pain of comfy.
Pain. Yeah. When it was going and they had a whole bunch of GPUs on it, that thing was firing them off like super quick. But it's, they got a whole bunch of other artists that are kind of lined up to do it. And hopefully they'll continue going with it, because I really hope they do.
So wait, we're rewinding to the NFT thing real quick. So were you just posting your stuff on Twitter, and then people that actually wanted to like buy your work approach you and were like, hey, are you ever going to mint these? Did it just kind of organically happen that way?
Yes. At that point, NFTs had very slowed down. This was December 22 into January 2023. Things had gotten fairly slow. I wasn't minting like I was. I was doing dailies with it, and eventually I stopped doing that and was just posting pictures of houses basically daily. And, sometimes people would reach out and ask, hey, are you going to mint it? And so I'd mint it for them. And just sell the work that way. Gas was expensive. I don't know if anybody, takes part in that, but sometimes gas could be a couple $100 to mint one piece of work. So it was kind of frustrating to just go and mint 100 pieces and hope that, somebody would come along and buy the work. when it wasn't really happening. So I wasn't really into minting all that much. But then at some point, these people started asking, and so here it is. I did 12 drops every 2 weeks until I hit 144 pieces. I defined it and just started selling them, at like 0.1 a pop and watching them go. And it was like, these are really cool. It was fun. It was something that I was really into. I was finally starting to get some support from other people for the architecture work, which was awesome, because I didn't really think like I would ever get any support for this. I didn't really think there was a market for it, and I loved it, but everybody else, it felt like it wasn't for everybody. It was just kind of like a small market, Up until that point, I talk a little bit about mythologicals, 7 minutes a frame. This was the first big NFT project I worked on, and this was with my buddy Jeremy. We were just making these little weird characters. They were like mythological characters, and this thing just exploded out of nowhere. They're all really bizarre and weird, but people were really into them.
It's so cool.
And they were like a PFP almost, but made with AI, and people didn't really understand what AI was yet at that point. So there was something just really, really interesting about these. But yeah, I've been doing the NFT thing since 2021. I've minted probably 1,000 pieces at this point. Probably over minted what I should have, but it was like I was having so much fun doing this that it would be silly not to. And that was just kind of the way it all worked for me.
Dude, those things are so cool. It's like you can see the little like creature structure in them, but also not.
Yeah, they're very, they have a mind of their own. Yeah. You can see that this has like some kind of like Indian influences, and we kind of put the prompt for the most part in here. So this was a telekinetic Krishna from a magical river made of magical auras powered by love.
Hey, someone go throw that into Stable Diffusion real quick and throw the image in the Discord chat. Someone go diffuse that real quick. And
we have done this with Midjourney and put these things in there, and it's pretty incredible what Midjourney will do to them now. The same prompts, using this as an initial image for it. It's like, wow, it's so amazing. Like how much further it's gone now.
Dude, yeah. Man, I didn't know how far back all your stuff, all of your stuff went.
Yeah, this is the stuff that you probably know, Tyler.
Yep.
This is more.
Yep.
This is where we're starting to get to like some current stuff now. This is me just kind of evolving this whole kind of like structures idea that I've been playing with for such a long time. This is where things have started to evolve now, with kind of a lot of control nets and just really exploring what's capable within comfy UI, and like these here are made with Stable Diffusion 3, as initial images.
Here we have pausing you real quick. We have a really great question in the Discord chat. Kat says, how do you specify your color palette in your renders? Is it mostly image references or specific LoRa's, or is there some secret sauce there? Because I will agree, all of your stuff, like your colors are very intentional, and
yes,
you are definitely using a color palette from something. And I think it is so cool because that's what makes your stuff. I actually, now that Katz mentions it, I really think that that's what's a big differentiator in your stuff from other people's, is like how intentional the colors in your things are.
All right. Yeah. Well, when I was in college, I was harped on constantly about my color decisions. They hated me. They hated my color decisions. And it was always kind of like this thing that they talked about, how I needed to take color theory courses. And so I took some, eventually understood what a color wheel was and how colors work together. And I just kind of started falling into these kind of bright color palettes that were, a little bit exciting, made me feel good about myself and about the world. Optimistic colors, I guess you would call them. A lot of these palettes are very distinct from kind of the 1960s and early 70s kind of time periods. It's just kind of what I gravitate towards. But as I'm playing with AI, a lot of times, and I talked about it earlier, finding and discovering these new things, it'll start to put colors together that I'm not necessarily thinking go good together. I think a great example of that is that Civitai, the little promo thing that I did. that's not where my head was at first. It took the color palette that I was giving it, and it kind of changed it up, but it worked really well. You know, and it kind of washed some of the colors out, but it still stayed with my oranges and yellows that I love so much. But yeah, I helped a little bit there. You know, I wasn't here at first.
So the color palettes in a lot of these are coming from the initial image that you generated, correct, that is then getting through AnimateDiff, right?
Yeah, almost all of the work I do now is very much driven by a certain image driving everything. You know, it'll be with an initial image. And in the case of sparse control, a lot of the sparse control work that I do is one image, and then I just turn it into a loop, and it animates. When I do stuff with steerable motion, I'm usually feeding it anywhere from 5 to 15 images and letting it kind of figure out how to animate between those images, but it's all very controlled and it's based on my images. And what I've learned the trick to do, and a lot of people have not yet, is getting everything to match what I give it really, really well. And, you know, I donated my workflow over to Palm. I figured, you know, he made the workflow. I'll give him my settings, right? Like he should be able to take that and use it. And he put it up there. If anybody wants to try it, it's the one called Rad Attack within the steerable motion. So you'll kind of have my settings there. And the one thing that he did do that you could be aware of is I always put a secondary K sampler in to upscale, and that usually makes things even better. I believe he turned that off, but all you got to do is turn it back on. Once you do that, you'll be closer to my workflow.
I am a giant proponent of the second K sampler to upscale in your initial workflow before pushing it into any other upscale.
Oh yeah.
Period. It makes such a massive difference. And Rad, real quick, I don't know if you can look in the Discord chat or look on my screen, but this is what that Krishna prompt spit out from Stable Diffusion.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. No, it doesn't surprise me. You know, go put the same thing into Midjourney and watch what it does. It's incredible seeing where it'll go now. It really is. Yeah, you know, these were a couple that kind of work together. So my buddy Human designed and kind of did a model in Stable Diffusion 2. And that was kind of where all of this stuff started basing for me. I could never get it to animate well. I mean, it was Stable Diffusion 2. It was probably the most hated model of all of Stable Diffusion until maybe 3.
Until now.
And so, like, I got some really cool results out of it. You know, he was training it on all the kind of, like, things that really influenced me, like generative art and whatnot. So I wanted to figure out a way to make it work. And it was just really, really hard. I got to have some of it somewhere here, I would think. Let me see if I can find any.
See, so I remembered you saying something about Stable Diffusion 2 when we were talking when we were at the Comfy UI thing, and in the back of my mind I was like, oh, that's the secret sauce. See, I knew. It's like when you go and you find the way to use the thing that everyone is running away from, your stuff will look completely different from everyone else.
Sure. No, it's totally true. Yeah, I'm having a hard time finding those. I do have some like old Jax work. So I don't know if you're familiar with Jax. So this was before Stable Diffusion, just a little bit. Jax was a runtime that Google had put out, but I always got really cool results, and they had image to image kind of built into that you could use. And so, you know, a lot of this was prompt based, but also with images. To help create the prompts, and I got just really cool results out of it. And you know, this was really abstract and kind of funky and weird, and I loved it. I still love Jax, but it's like the one notebook that's virtually impossible to run locally. Now that everything has changed and the dependencies are all different, I don't know of a single person who has it running still.
Dude, these are so cool, man. You should. I know you're a Twitter guy, but you should just start posting your back catalog, just like. Post one thing on Instagram every day, and I promise you will blow up on Instagram too.
Thank you. You know, I tried doing the one a day thing on Instagram, and it didn't start going. So I started just kind of consolidating, like basically once every week. But I'd love to see Instagram go. So I don't know if people want to follow me on Instagram. I'm happy to take your follow. It's not MakeItRad on Instagram. Yeah. I love black and white. This was another thing that I started doing. I'm like, I'm going to try black and white. Nobody else is doing that. And I'll see how that works out. And I always thought they were really cool. They almost felt like pencil drawings to me. They were very pretty works.
Someone said they're trying the Krishna prompt in Pony right now.
Oh boy, that should be fun. So here everybody's dissing on StyleGAN, or not StyleGAN, but Stable Diffusion 3. But I got some pretty great results using the initial images within steerable motion with it. I still look at these and say, this is a unique look and it's cool. I think it works well. It's really about getting the right kind of juxtaposition of images within the steerable motion to get the right kind of style of animation you want. But they almost have a three-dimensional feel to them. I got that kind of worked out.
So you generated the initial image with SD3 and these ones we're seeing right now?
Yeah, I did it all the morning it came out. It's the only time I've played with it so far, that first hour. I just haven't had time to play with it since then, or I would, but I think I exported, 300 or 400 images out of it, went through and picked my favorites, ones that I thought would work next to each other well, and rendered these out with them.
Dude,
so,
that's...
I think you can even make stuff with things you consider kind of bad. This was more exploration on trying to figure out new ways to kind of make these structures feel a little bit different, trying to play with this kind of bubbly look to it a little bit more so. Again, something outside of my comfort zone. I don't usually use round shapes and round objects, but, they were well received. I got some text in the morning like, dude, these are nuts. I love these. So I'm having fun with it, and I'm just trying to explore things that are a little bit new for me. See where it takes me.
Dude, those two that you just had up there, I think might be my favorite things that you've shown today.
Cool. Very cool. Yeah, that's all kind of a new way of working for me. Everything's been so straight lined for me for so long. So to actually have like roundness, seems silly to most people, but having round for me is something. I fought for so long to make straight lines, which was extremely difficult to do, that when I actually got them, I've just never wanted to get away from them now.
Man. Dude, these things are... It's suffice to say, man, I love everything that you've made. And the tilt shift looking things. Okay, so this is when I became aware of you. This is what I started seeing. So like clearly we haven't really known each other that long, because I just started to up my Twitter game as like also an effort to get the Civitai Twitter going even more, and just like ramp that up. But this is what I saw from you initially, and these things drove me crazy.
So this was something I started probably 2 years ago. I was just making tilt shift imagery with it, and I'd been looking for a way to animate this. I trained it in StyleGAN. They completely failed. They didn't look good. It was just nothing that I wanted to show anybody. And so then I took the idea of it, and I'm like, I'm going to train StyleGAN XL. So StyleGAN XL, it puts all the other StyleGANs kind of to shame in terms of training. You have to train it from 16 by 16 pixel images, then up to 32 to 32, then to 64 to 64. And each one of those takes a couple days, right? And so you keep going until you get to the resolution that you want. And I thought that was going to be the end all, that I was going to be the winner with that. And at the end of a month of training, it kind of laughed at me, and I got nothing, which was super unfortunate. But I didn't give up. I still kept these things for a very long time. And, once steerable motion came out, I'm like, I'm going to put these into steerable motion and see what I can do with those. And I ended up getting these, which I'm in love with. I love them. I got my lighting so beautiful on them, and just the movements that I started to get out of these were so unusual. Things started to move in just ways that I'd never expected things could move. And they just felt so like tangible, like I could be and I could touch this stuff, It was so cool.
Man, so someone in Twitch asked, why do these look like a microscopic world? Man, go look up tilt shift photography and tilt shift videography, and you'll see what these are based on. Tilt shift is like it's a special lens that the lens will actually like the lens will be sliced in half, and you can actually swivel the camera lens, and it gives this effect when you use it properly, where like the things that are in your frame come out looking like miniatures. There's a whole style around it, but seeing it in AI like this, especially that one on the right, man, where like it's like the city and the cars, and then it goes to like by the beach, and then it's like the house in the hills. It's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, I was always fascinated with tilt shift. I remember seeing it for the first time, and what I saw was, I think it was like Shibuya in Japan. Somebody shot a tilt shift there, and it's like, it's the busiest intersection in the world of these people crossing this crosswalk, and they all looked like it was from a train model. And I'm just like, this is incredible, and I was really into photography at that point too. So my buddy brought in his tilt shift lens, and he started to explain to me how he uses it and how he was using it so that it didn't mess up the perspective of his architecture photography. Because you could tilt shift the lens and basically get the whole building if you were down on the ground in focus, and it wouldn't like make it abstract and strange. So I got to kind of play with the real tools, and I always think that's something good, so that people know like what the real tools do, so that you can really mess with them later. And I think that's kind of what happened here.
So
ended up with something really different.
Also, just because of how cool this is, I gotta shout out this account that I follow on Instagram that I really, really love. This guy doesn't do anything AI, but he does just strictly tilt shift, and his account is called miniature.tokyo. If you guys like the way this stuff looks, go check out his account, because he just runs around Tokyo with his tilt shift lens, and it is wild. It is wild. I mean,
you might even have been the guy that I saw. It sounds like it could have been the same person.
Dude, it's so crazy. I get lost in his Instagram feed, because it's like the things. Yeah, Cats, thank you for the link there. Here, I'll even put the link in the Twitch chat. Don't want to pull too much attention from Rad, but want to spread the inspiration around. And if you guys leave a comment on his thing, let him know that JBugs Creative sent you guys there.
So here's some of the original kind of tilt shift ones that I was doing, JBug, just before they were motion. I found a few of those. But yeah, it was kind of an unfortunate thing watching all that training go kind of to shit. It never really went anywhere from StyleGAN perspective. It was another instance of me trying to make StyleGAN do something that it really just wasn't going to be good at.
Man, the direction, dude. I love the direction.
Thank you. I had a lot of fun with those. I'll just kind of go through this. And the reason I like to show this is because it kind of shows all the different tools that I've used. So this was something that somebody early on said that they really liked, was one of their favorite pieces. So I like to show this. And it's actually pinned on my tweet if you want to kind of see the history here. I started with these images. I made approximately 10,000 of these to train in StyleGAN with. I ended up getting some really great StyleGANs out of it. This being one of them, which is really just kind of bizarre. I didn't expect it to work very good, because I thought there was so much detail in it. There's just no way this is going to be good, and it really turned out great. I trained it again in what's the latest StyleGAN 3, which gave me some kind of good results too. It kind of keeps the textures from slipping, but it does this kind of weird right to left movement that I wasn't in love with, and the bass kind of threw me off. But I tried it here as well. Then I think I went to Gen 2 to see kind of what they could do with it, and kind of get an idea of that. And I thought, oh, that's kind of cool, but I had to make my own loop by going back and forth. And then I've taken it into the latest tool, which is steerable motion. I took maybe 10 or 20 of those exact same images that I used to train StyleGAN with. But I think you can see the amount of detail that it brings now, and like how clean interpolation is. It's really next level. It's really starting to open up, an avenue for animation that wasn't there. And granted, the StyleGAN one that I did was literally weeks of training. This, we're talking 10 minutes, man. 10 minutes with no training with steerable motion. So it's like, look at the difference.
Yeah, a lot. So like when I don't see you posting architecture stuff, I see you posting things that almost look like these little living, breathing, organic sculptures on your Twitter.
Yeah, that's all the sparse control work. And for some reason, I kind of skipped over a lot of that. I don't know why. I think I put it in here for you. Where did I put it all? Sparse control. Yeah, see, I had a whole folder of it. You see a lot of this type of stuff. I do a lot of, I guess I would call it, I don't know. I've been calling it just alien fruit to myself, but I know that's not what it is. It's underwater kind of floral scenes. Trying to get these to like just move perfectly. I had worked on a lot of this. This was what I was talking about when I was saying like kind of like living images. I didn't want it to move too much. I wanted them to be slow and whatnot. So you get a lot of this kind of real funkiness. This was from a collection I did for Mirage Gallery. It's all about kind of this evolutionary type of thing. But that was when I first started using AnimateDiff, and I wasn't going to use it as part of the collection. And then as I got further into it, I think about 3/4 of the way through the collection, I had to hit up the curator and go, look, I'm going to change directions here. I'm really in love with this AnimateDiff thing. And I want to include it in the collection as well. So I made like a huge departure, and I had to get rid of a lot of work that I had already done and put that into it because I did think it was so cool, and I thought it had legs. And it had just come out too. This was September of last year. It just came out for I shouldn't say it just came out. It came out in comfy to the point where we could do the really cool things with it. This was the stuff that I was trying to animate with StyleGAN that never really worked. And when I found Sparse control, I'm like, man, this stuff's great. This one actually ended up on Times Square. It played there for a day, which was pretty awesome.
Hey.
It doesn't show anything. You should be good.
Awesome, man.
You guys know who this guy is, Nagel? I always loved his work. He did like all the beauty salon artwork back in the 80s. Yeah, dude, maybe you don't know.
This stuff it's so cool, man.
Anyhow, I can go forever, Tyler. So you gotta turn me off, man.
No, so okay. Before we kind of wind down and wrap it up here, the last thing I want you to kind of talk about, because I really like in these streams when everyone watching can get some type of takeaway from it. And even though I think I've definitely gotten a few takeaways from here. See, like my entire secret plan with doing these streams too is to have you guys on, share your sauce, and then go run away to the lab. But real quick, I want you to talk a little bit about like the amount of time you put in to cultivating like a direction and the idea, and then taking like the idea you start with and how it kind of like iterates as you explore that idea. And it might not be, by the time you're like at the end of it, it might not be the same thing, but it still started in a place that kind of carried a thread through the whole thing. And just kind of like the intention and the importance behind really cultivating and putting just as much effort into training your taste and your ideas as you do learning the tools.
Yeah,
and the technical side of things.
It's definitely a two-way street. Something I learned a long time ago is to try to write your idea down, like when you start. So I usually try to come up with something. It doesn't have to be more than even a word. But I think having kind of that one thing that you're always going to kind of refer back to and go, oh, am I hitting that? Am I hitting that? Is really a good practice to get into. If you don't have that, a lot of times you just you're a runaway train. And sometimes that actually makes making artwork harder to do. I know for myself, if I have absolutely no barriers it's really hard, like I can just go
Agreed.
anywhere. I can't get myself to do what I need to do. If I've got that one word, in this case, like the stuff you guys are looking at right now, it was all about this kind of evolutionary kind of thing. Think about like the recycling of the world, right? We kind of start with rocks and it kind of moved into this kind of flowers and things just kind of build and grow. And so I kind of always kept going back to that. I ended up making 200 pieces for it between StyleGAN and AnimateDiff. And, I always had that in the back of my head. Like, how does this thing evolve from one to the next? How does it work? And that, I think, is really good. Start putting something down a little bit on paper before you get going there. I think, especially with AI, it's very easy to kind of just like have the shotgun approach where you're just making stuff all the time, and maybe you're not being very decisive about what you're trying to make. So that's why if you write the one word down, you can at least go back to it. And even if it's not one word and you had this like one sentence, I'm trying to do this by doing this. If you have that, you've at least got your barriers and you're trying to make it work. You don't even have to ever tell anybody what it is. You can let the viewer decide what it means. That's the great thing about making art. You're not actually having to communicate something like you would if you were doing a commercial for a company and you're a designer, right? Like that has to have a very clear definition of what it is and what it's supposed to communicate. With art, you want people to interpret it. That's kind of the beauty of it. And I think pull up all your work and look at it together. I think that's something maybe people don't do. If you're building out a full collection, does it all work together? If you're looking at stuff and one thing's hot pink and, the next thing's anime and you got trains over here or something, it's like, what is going on? What are you thinking, dude? Like put it all together and look at it as a whole. If it doesn't work together as a whole, then it's probably not a good collection of work.
Man,
I don't know. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, no, dude, you did. And we got one more callback question to your color palettes. Is there any little tidbits you can give to people to get better color palettes out of their image generations, or is that all in you specifically training the LoRAs that you're using?
No, I mean, I think the best way to get colors in AI is to just talk about like time periods are a really good thing to talk about. In my case, I use a lot of like words that have to do with mid-century. The one thing I find that helps really kind of like brand your work and whatever you're trying to do is talk about film stocks. In my case, I use a lot of things like Kodachrome, like films that were around in the 60s and 70s. They had a very distinct look and distinct color and sometimes, distinct noise patterns to them. So you can start kind of bringing that out. There's a lot of tools just for color palettes in general that Adobe puts together. They used to have a website. It was called like Cooler. It was spelled like Kueller.
No, it's COOLOR now.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. It's kind of spells cooler. But it was cool because you could build out little palettes, right? And you could say, hey, I want secondary colors or tertiary colors. So it was using like really strong foundational color theory to build color palettes that you could use in Photoshop. But there's no reason you can't just download the swatches and use that as an initial image to help guide your colors. Like Diffusion's smart enough to kind of just pull the colors from there and not necessarily use swatches when you make the work. So that's kind of another thing. And I used to tell my students about that all the time. Like, look, you're having problems with color. I used to struggle with this a lot as well. You don't have to. There's a lot of tools out there to use. And I guess the last one that I would tell people, go find imagery that you like. Spend a couple days on Pinterest. I know it sounds stupid and it's like all crafty or whatever, but Pinterest is great. I mean, you can go save yourself like a little board of things that you find that are inspirational. You can pull those out. You can bring them back in, use it as an initial image, but denoise on it, so that you're hitting it, 95% diffusion with like 5% of the original image. And it's just going to pull the colors from it at that point. And you'll get work that feels like it was meant to be done, a certain way. It'll still have that feeling of what you were looking at before without using that as part of the design necessarily, but just the color.
Man. So, dude, I don't even know how to sign this off because this was so good. And listen, Listen, as someone who has now been awake for far too long and got far too little sleep before jumping onto this, you made this so easy to stay super engaged and super interested the entire time. And I actually forgot how tired I was. Like this,
I'm glad to hear it, man.
Dude, this for me, even though you didn't like share a workflow or do the whole thing, like everything that you showed us and just like looking back at what you did before and seeing how it came forward and the talk about color, the talk about composition, just like everything that you touched on while showing us your journey through the entire thing. This hands down has been one of my favorite streams, because I feel like even just listening to you, you helped me fill in a lot of little gaps kind of in my creative process that I might have been missing, that I'm now going to go back and kind of check myself on, because I'm constantly asking the question like, okay, how does what I'm doing right now evolve further, right? Like where do I go from here when every couple weeks I feel like here is a new place?
Sure.
So nah, dude, this was this was absolutely a masterclass for me, and I'm super grateful that you came on and shared with us. I know you like to, you're a little bit more on the introverted side, but dude, yeah.
I like doing this, Tyler. I think it's fun. And I do just want to throw out there, I don't necessarily like to show people the workflows, but I'm an open book when it comes to how I make the work. But I find it, and I want everyone out there who's making AI work to like be able to understand when we talk about a K-sampler. I want them to know what that is and how it works, So if you guys have questions, feel free to hit me up, DM on Twitter or Instagram or whatever. I will usually give you a snippet of how I did it. I'll tell you it. But I want you to go out and figure out what that means. Figure out how to do that yourself. Once we're all speaking the same language, this will become a lot easier for everybody, But I think just throwing people workflows you're not learning anything, and you're just dumping your work into somebody else's workflow, and you're not getting there. It's great for an example. I'm glad Banadoko exists. But I really want people to like go in and dig and play with the nodes in Comfy and figure out what they do, and share that information amongst each other. But don't just take what somebody else did all the time and just throw your work into it and call it a day, because there's so much more to it. And I think you will find you'll find some diamonds that somebody else won't find by exploring. So just go out there and explore. That's the biggest thing I can try to get to everybody here.
That's what it is, man. The more we take from each other and put our spin on it, that is what pushes this all forward, because I promise you, we all have such drastically different tastes than one another, and what we're all doing with these tools and with the AI stuff needs it needs ourselves injected into it, and that's what's going to take it from being this kind of like very robotic thing that the normies think is very kind of like cold and soulless to, oh, wait, there's actually something real going on here. Man, dude, I can't say thank you enough. This was such a pleasure for me. I'm sure you guys, we've pretty much stayed at about like 600 viewers on Twitch. I really hope you guys got as much out of this entire thing as I have, because this was basically like a classes in session hour for me, and I was so looking forward to this. Dude, Rad, is there anything you would like to say just in closing? Let people know where to find you and any of that good stuff.
Yeah. Well, number one, thanks for having me over. It's always fun to kind of relive the past and show off the work. You guys can find me on Twitter. I am MakeItRad1. Instagram, I am not MakeItRad. And I have a website up. I try to put up, the stuff I find to be the coolest up there. I'm a little late to putting some of this up, but that's makeitrad.xyz. And if anybody is at CVPR this week, I've got couple pieces of work being exhibited there. So, it'd be great to get a picture if anybody could send me one.
Right on.
Right, Make It Rad. It's not Make It Rad. Not Make It Rad on that Instagram post that you put up, Staffy.
Yeah, on Instagram, his at is not Make It Rad. On Instagram, it is Make It, and Twitter, it is Make It Rad 1. Here, I'm gonna put the Instagram link in the Twitch chat for you guys right now. His Twitter is pinned to the top of the Twitch chat. So guys, don't do him a favor, do yourselves a favor and go follow this man on the platforms so that every time one of his pieces shows up or he posts something new, which he posts a couple times a day on Twitter, you can get that little dose of inspiration that it's time to put your creative hat on and start working just a little bit harder, because I know that is what it does for me. Dude, Rad, you're a legend, man. In a couple weeks, couple months, we are definitely going to circle back with you, because I know everything you do is going to be ever evolving, and I can't wait to see all the stuff you do next. And after this hour, dude, I already had high appreciation for your work, but I really do have a deep appreciation for all the stuff that you do. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you guys for having me. Everybody have a great day. Take care. Happy weekend.
Boom. And with that, Twitch, this has been an epic Civitai Guest Creator Session. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I know I did. This will be uploaded to YouTube first thing Monday morning, so you guys can run it back and get that inspiration whenever you need. I know this one is going to go in a playlist all on its own for me on YouTube. And whew, man, that was a busy week of streams. Your boy is tired. I don't know if I want to sleep or if I want to go play Elden Ring, but I promise you there will probably not be any grass touch this weekend. So with that being said, guys, my name is Tyler. You heard from Make It Rad. Go find him on all of his social platforms. We will catch you guys back here first thing on Monday for Ali's office hour stream. And let me just check real quick here. Next week's guest. I got a good one for you guys next week too. See, every week, if there's one thing you guys can count on me on, it is to find the people that are going to help you guys level up. Next week, we have Inner Reflections AI himself, the man with one of the most used and great articles on Comfy UI and how to use it. This article that this man wrote on Comfy UI on Civitai is what helped me wrap my head around Comfy UI, and it is what my workflow is built on top of. The base
Inner
workflow
Reflections is awesome.
Awesome.
I learned
man.
so much from him. Make sure you guys show up for that one. It's a great one.
Dude, it is epic. And not only that, we got to meet Inner Reflections in person at the Comfy UI Thought Leadership Conference, and he's such a nice guy that next week is going to be awesome, because it's going to be cool to get one of the voices from the website, from Civitai, that really helped so many people with that article. So if you guys are not subscribed, make sure you subscribe. It really goes a long way in helping us continue to make high quality AI community content for you all. And it helps me make the argument to the boss guys to keep this going, which luckily there is no argument there, because this is epic. Guys, have a wonderful weekend. My name is Tyler. I will see you guys next week, Thursday, for AI video and animation. Ali will be back on Monday for office hours. Have a great weekend, everyone. Appreciate you. Civitai.com. We're out.
Take care.
Boom, Rad. Hold on just a second here. Let me turn all this